Coach Rick Sowell, welcome to episode number 38 of the Path to Follow podcast. It's great to have you in. You're our first Zoom call podcast, but Cesare has fixed everything up, so it's nothing has changed. You know, it's like you're really in the room here. But it's great to see you again. We were just catching up before recording here and talking about how the last time I saw you, we were on the field kind of confused. We had just won a game against IMG Academy. We were all feeling good. And then all of a sudden it was like, everyone take your bags, get your stuff, time to go home. And COVID is here. So it was unfortunate because we had a lot of really good players and our team we're doing pretty well. It was Coach Nostrand's first year. It was your first time at, coaching at Gilman. And we're starting to groove a little bit as a team. But yeah, it was unfortunate, but it's good to see you again, Coach. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Well, it's great. It's great to see you too, Jake. And I appreciate you inviting me to join you and just chat for a little bit. And you're right, man. You just touched upon a lot there. And you think about the last year and how excited we were this time a year ago, as you mentioned, Coach Nostrand's first year, the senior class, all fired up, big class, committed, seemed as though they were very committed. And I came in, I guess it ended up being probably about a month or so, and just in that short period of time, got to really just enjoy the team, the guys, being around guys, people like yourself. Obviously, I know your old, your dad. I was going to say your older brother, but off on that. Where am I going, Coach Sowell, on that one? But your dad and I go way back, and I was very much looking forward to working with you and getting to know you more too. So it all unfortunately ended back on that March 14th, and we all have our stories. So it's not as if we're sitting here, I guess we're talking about the fact of the matter, but we weren't alone, as we all know, but yeah, modern technology with the Zoom and it allows me to be here in Northern Virginia and as you mentioned, have a conversation just as though we were in the same room.
Exactly, right. And Coach, what are you up to these days now that you're not at Gilman anymore, you're not coaching? What are you working on right now and who are you coaching?
Yeah, great question there, Jake. I actually moved back in July. I lived in Severna Park, Maryland for about 9 years or so. And we decided to move to Northern Virginia, out near Dulles Airport. I don't know how familiar you are with Northern Virginia. Chantilly's the town the area I live in, Fairfax County. And so, I feel like I've come full circle in my coaching career because when I began coaching outside of when I coached at Washington College, I graduated from Washington College in 1985. I stayed 2 years and coached with Coach Corcoran. And then I came to DC, I guess it was 1987. And 3 years at St. Albans, and I ended up coaching at Georgetown for 8 years. So I kind of feel like this is where I got my official professional coaching career started. And now that 30 or so years later, here I am back, but I really did like the area back then. I mean, again, 30 years ago, but and a lot has changed. But I really like the area. And so we decided to move here. I'm still very involved in lacrosse, I would say on all levels, but mainly the high school youth, that level, some, college age, doing some training. I've worked with a number of teams. I've actually done some, I'm going to do a podcast with a team. We're going to talk about leadership and, seniors, just having the conversation, just seeing how I can help if I can help, just in terms of, what a culture of leadership looks like and those sorts of things. But I've actually, I became the boys director at it's a fitness center, Jake, and you go fitness center. It's a fitness center like I've never seen before. I mean, it is full. They have a full field, indoor field, but it's not just your 100-yard field and then the buildings around it. It's actually a full-size soccer field. I don't know soccer all that well, but they said it's FIFA length, which is 150 yards, and it's a wider field too. So you can only play a game in this facility, but you can do a lot more outside, around it. And so it really is going to be a nice facility. But in addition to that, it has 2 hockey rinks, 2 Olympic-sized pools. It has a weight room, like a 3-story weight room. It's got a restaurant. It's got a spa.
Oh, wow.
In it. And yeah, it's 3 years old. They have a girls program, and they want to, which includes club teams. They do clinics, they do training, and they want to do the same thing on the boys' side. And so it really is, to be honest with you, Jake, what I've been wanting to do since a year ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm excited. This just happened, to be honest with you. It just happened over the last 3 or 4. We've been talking for the last couple of weeks, just kind of, getting to know each other and seeing if we would be a good fit for each other. And I'm super excited. The place I'm working at is called the St. James. The St. James. And I got to find out why exactly they're calling it's called the St. James,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what it's called. It's in Springfield, Virginia, and it's an unbelievable facility. It really is. And so I'm excited to be their boys director. And like I said, we're going to be doing some training. We're going to be eventually we're going to start a club program. And so yeah, so I'm kind of, my sleeves are about ready to get rolled up, and I'm going to deep dive. I actually started coaching one of the club teams, Coach Nostrand's club team,
Mesa Fresh.
And I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. They need the help, so that certainly that kind of got things going initially. But it's a great opportunity for me to. I enjoy working with any group of kids. So, and in this particular case, they're 6th graders, but 27s, I guess they are. But I'm going to be involved with youth lacrosse. So for me, it's like, this would be great just to kind of deep dive into it, you know what I mean? And just kind of get into it and just kind of see how, the coaching and, I'll be observing, Travis and John, picking their brain, because they obviously have, I love their model. I love their club model.
Because the Mesa model is really all about development and getting players better, and maybe not so much winning tournaments, but more about the process and getting kids to actually enjoy the sport. And there's a lot of lacrosse organizations now, especially these club teams, that it's so competitive that it's all about winning the tournament and building the organization and building the brand name. And so Mesa is a little bit different because it helps guys get better. And I played for Mesa growing up, and it was like that back then, and it's like that now. So Nostrand, he sticks to his model, which has worked for sure.
No question, 100%. And that is me too, to a T. I'm about developing, and I'm going to strive to win. Believe you me, we're all competitive. We all want to win, but at that age, and again, I'm talking 6th graders. There's a lot for them to learn. There's a lot that they don't know. And so I want to be a part of helping them become better players. Yes, we're going to go out and we're going to strive to win. All right. But that's not going to be the end all be all. It's just not. But so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We had a scrimmage on Saturday, which was my first time, just being around the team and that was exciting. And then we had our first, I guess you can say, official practice yesterday. And so that was fun. And so that, that'll give me something to do, for a while, because the season starts at the end of March. It will go until, sometime in May, I guess, depending upon how far you go in the playoffs. But, so I'm looking forward to coaching, but I'm also, I'm keeping an eye on just, how things are being run and, just kind of looking at, whether the league or, Mesa with Coach Nostrand, Travis Loving, just kind of, trying to learn as much as I can about the club
for sure
environment.
For sure. Are you also, I'm sure, keeping an eye open for college positions? Are you looking maybe to get back into college coaching at some point? Or are you pretty content where you are with helping guys develop and become, college players?
Yeah. Another great question, Jake, but I'll be honest. When I left Navy, we were talking about the pandemic being a year ago. It's hard to believe it'd be almost 2 years, and at the end of April, I can't believe that, But when I left at the time, I kind of just felt, it was just a feeling that, I was ready to move on from college coaching. Loved it, had a great experience, tremendous, 28 years, 8 as an assistant coach, and then another 20 as a head coach. Feel like I got my fill. Now, if there was a great opportunity out there, or Urban Meyer thought he wasn't going to coach, college football, pro football ever again. And look where he is. But no, seriously, I do think that maybe that is in the past, and I don't want to say it's my calling. That might be a little bit taking things too far. But the idea that being able to give back and help the youth develop, and whether they become college players or better players, or ultimately, Jake, just have a great experience.
Right. Right.
That to me is, I'm like like yesterday, for example, I'm running around, and I told the kids, I said, fellas, one of the reasons why I want to coach you guys is that I can be a little kid like you, I can run around, I've got my stick, and, of course they had me do, we had a little competition. I lost. I had to do, 20 push-ups. They enjoyed counting those push-ups, so things like that are exciting, and they like it too. It just brings a little bit different touch to practice. Now we're going to work hard too, but it's kind of a little bit of give and take. Right. And then you get them where they're working hard and they don't even know it. You know what I mean? There's where, and that might take me a couple of weeks to get them to that point where we're doing some things that we're really, that, if they stop and thought, they're going to be like, man, coach is really getting out. Coach is really getting after it today.
Yep.
They're not going to feel it. They're going to be having so much fun. And then when they go home and lay down on the couch, that's when it will hit them. But no, so yeah, it's a lot of fun. And like I said, I'm very much looking forward to coaching these guys.
It's a different caliber, different mindset of coaching to the college game, I think, but it's also like you're still involved with lacrosse, you're developing players, you're focusing on really, the important parts of players' development. You have a hand in, what they might do in the future, a huge hand in what they might do in the future in that development process. And that's kind of where I started to get into coaching, was working with younger players about technique and doing lessons and clinics and, focusing on the, some of the ways that I learned from my dad who taught me lacrosse. And that was really what was fun for me. That's kind of how I got into coaching in the first place. And I'm sure it's a similar story for you. It's like, why'd you first want to coach? It's because it's pretty fun, right? You're still 100%. Competing, you're helping people.
100%, Jake. And you could talk to players that I coached when I was at Georgetown and when I first got into college coaching back in the early 90s, I'd be out, I just love being on the field, helping them develop. That's what that's the part, and Coach Nostrand will tell you too, that, even with the Gilman guys, I was looking, that's what those back in January, taking those guys, hey, it's going to be 50 degrees on Sunday, Sam King, hey, if a group of guys want to work out, and then walking up, because when you, as when you park at Gilman, you can't see up on the top field. I'll never forget the one day, it was like on a Sunday, and it was a rain, it was the last second. They contacted me, Sam or maybe Jack Torlani, and they said, Coach, we can work out, and I said, yeah, sure. Not knowing, I thought it'd be a handful of guys. I walked up those stairs, and there was like 30 guys. I was like, oh my God, and that was, again, to me, another sign that, man, these guys are serious and they're into it. But that's the part I really, really, really enjoy, putting the time in, getting them reps, teaching them. And I coached for 28 years in college coaching. Probably 25 of those years I complained, I used to complain with other fellow college coaches about the high school kids coming into college, and they bring their bad habits, or they don't have this, we all grouchy, we got to break them down and then we got to reteach them. Mm-hmm. Well, now I'm on the other side. I get to shape them at an earlier age. I got to put my money where my mouth is, right? Right. I was moaning and groaning all those years. So now it's like, okay, Coach Sowell, all right, you were talking now. Okay. Show us how to get it done. So put a little pressure on myself now, after all those years of moaning and groaning.
I love it.
I'll be developing players that these college coaches, hopefully won't be doing the same thing I was doing.
So, Coach Sowell, tell me a little bit about your entrance into the sport of lacrosse and who kind of inspired you or motivated you or helped you get into the sport? Because I know that you started at a relatively late age, right? 10th grade, right? 10th grade, you started playing lacrosse?
I was a baseball player all the way up through, played Little League, Babe Ruth. Even the first year I played lacrosse, I was in 10th grade. I was only 15 years old, so I played Babe Ruth baseball late spring throughout the summer. Made all the all-star teams. We had a pretty good team. Actually, one of the guys I played with ended up going on and playing professional baseball. Kurt Manwaring played for the San Francisco Giants all those years. Won a World Series. Played with Bonds and all those guys. So yeah. But what it was, and this, Jake, I'm at the age now when you can look back on certain points in your life, whether it's a decision that you made, whether it was just another decision that, at the time you had no idea where it was going to lead you. Mm-hmm. And now you look back in your life and you go, wow, like what would have happened if, instead of going this way, I'd gone that way. How would my life turn out? Well, we had a teacher who came to my school district. I guess I was in like 8th grade. And he had played football and lacrosse at Hobart. And he came to my school district to teach. He was a math teacher, but he also coached basketball, which he ended up coaching me in freshman basketball. He coached football. Initially, he coached JV football. He was my JV coach. And then he became the varsity assistant coach my junior and senior year. So he coached me in football 3 of my high school years. And so he starts this lacrosse program. I was in 8th grade. It was a club program. It had to be club for a couple of years before it became a varsity sport, as I found out later. And I'd see guys walking around the halls, with, stick in their hand. And yeah, you talk to them, you'd wonder like, what the heck is that? Like, what? And so never forget this. So my sophomore year, I had a pretty good football year. I was a quarterback back in the day. And so season ends, and his homeroom was right across from my homeroom. So I'd see the coach every day, Coach Moffit. And let me tell you a little bit about Coach Moffit. He was our freshman basketball team and our football team. We won a lot. We ran a lot too. He was a big disciplinarian. He was big on conditioning. He was big on fundamentals. And while that may at times wasn't pleasant, mm-hmm. The results, we won a lot. And a lot of times we beat teams, we were pretty good players, pretty good, but we were winning probably more than we should have been winning, and it was just a direct reflection of his coaching. We were in pretty good shape. Plus we knew if we lost, we were going to be doing more up downs on Monday. So, so that, created a little bit extra motivation to win, but no. So from the end of my football season till the beginning of lacrosse, I kid you not, till the beginning, he would talk to me about trying, like, you should try to play lacrosse, Rick, you'd be good at it, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be talking to him about what? Tell me the rules. You can hit people with this, and they had those wooden shafts back then, the wooden, those PL-77s. I don't know if you're familiar with those real thick heads that when you throw a poke check, the head wasn't bending, your rib cage, and your body was bending, not the stick head, Yep. And it could be 1,000 degrees and it wasn't going to wilt, it was that hard of plastic, and he's describing, how you can get hit. Now there's penalties, and he did try to explain to me back then a slash and all those penalties. And I for every day except like literally it was the day before practice when I said, you know what, I'm going to play lacrosse. I'll give it a shot. And super light 2 was my first stick. Blue head, red, white, and blue. White net, had the red string. Mesh stick. Although later on I became traditional, and I used to string. I really got into it.
You got into it, yeah.
Sticks. Oh yeah, and so that's what tipped it off. Sophomore year. It was our first varsity year. We were 5-13. And then 2 years later, we ended up being 14-5. I just told recently, I forget who it was. I just talked to someone, but I was a long stick midi, if you can believe this or not. My first year, I was a long stick midi. And back then you could play with like tweener sticks. Believe it or not, you could play with like a 50-inch stick, mm-hmm. And so it wasn't the super long one, but it wasn't the 42-inch sticks either. So it was kind of that tweener. a few years after that, they changed the rule where it is to this day, where you had to have the long ones or the 40. You can go from 40 to 42. I think 42 inches is the longest they make shafts. So yeah, that was my first year. It was a long stick, D midi. Didn't score one goal.
But you stuck with it after that first year. Something about the sport made you want to, you
fell in love with it. Fell in love with it. Yeah. Fell in love with it. It's funny because my best friend grew up in my neighborhood. He's a couple years younger than me. One of my best friends, and he, they talk. My neighbors, when I go home, we talk about how I kind of started a revolution of lacrosse. Because I had the stick. I had all the little neighborhood kids. We were getting sticks in their hands, and we would build goals. We'd have take 2x4s and try to build it wouldn't be a 6x6, maybe it was a 5x5, and we'd get a net and we'd be out in my backyard. That's the things that we did, when growing up. A lot of neighborhood, whether it's football, basketball, street hockey, you name it. We were doing something as kids.
Well, that's something that I talk about a little bit, is that kind of creativity in the sport of lacrosse is lost a little bit with a lot of organized and constant competition. I fell in love with lacrosse just from playing in my backyard with, pickup games of, with the mini lacrosse net. And it sounds like it was similar for you. That's the fun part. It's the creative part of it.
That's the fun part. Yeah. Yeah. And creative, you get the boys, and to your point about, the competition and leagues and all, you had your backyard, you had your buddies. You made up the games, you made the rules, and you enforced them. You know what I mean? You weren't, there's no referee, there's no parents, it's you guys had to figure it out. And yeah, there were times when you'd argue and maybe things would escalate and flare up, but that's just all part of the right of being a boy growing up, right? That's exactly how I saw it.
Exactly. Yeah. From starting to play lacrosse, did you have any thoughts about coaching lacrosse early on, or did that happen naturally from working with younger guys after college? And did you fall into coaching naturally, or did you have an idea that you wanted to get into it?
Yes, I did. I had, when I was in high school, I coached, or not coached. We had a Thorn Street Park had a pool, kind of the town pool, had baseball, football fields, it had tennis courts. It had basketball courts. You could have there was a little picnic area. People didn't picnic a lot there, but you could. And it was the place to be during the summer, the place to be during the summers. And I worked there. I used to hand out, if they'd come and want a basketball, or if they wanted to tennis, you know what I mean? So so I knew right then I just enjoyed being around sports. And, what I thought I was going to be honest with you, back then, I was I'd like to be a gym teacher. I just kind of, I'd like to be a gym teacher, and then eventually, and then coach. I'm sure that was part of it too. But that didn't really kick in until a couple of years later, when I was a sophomore in college. I came home and they started a youth league program, and they asked me if I wanted to coach. That's when the lacrosse coaching bug really kicked in. My buddy that I was just telling you about, Mike Andrews, his name, who grew up in the neighborhood, he and I coached this team that summer, and they were 5th, 6th graders. And it was so much fun. Mm-hmm. It was so much fun. Just, we were like the Bad News Bears at the beginning. You know what I mean? We had some of the kids, the characters, they were tough kids. They didn't know how to play the game. And they were a couple brothers that would fight, the Cook brothers that, Jeff and Timmy, they would fight all the time. You know what I mean? They would just, and we started off, we lost in the beginning. And then by the end of the year, we won a championship. We ended up winning, and it was just so exciting to see them, how we all came together, and how we and then winning it. And so that's what got me going. That really was. Now, I didn't know if it was going to be, I was thinking more high school, again, going back to even being a gym teacher. Mm-hmm. And even when I mentioned earlier in the conversation about coaching at St. Albans, I really thought and I was fine with that. That's kind of, what I guess envisioned,
So tell me a little bit about Coach Corcoran at Washington College and his influence, and maybe a little bit about what it was like, because so many players on your team ended up coaching eventually. And I've heard Coach Nostran in the office rave about Terry Corcoran and his influence on all of you guys.
So true. I can't say enough. You know, be it you mentioned this earlier about who were the influences. My high school coach for sure, and he, like, again, got me going. He made sure I went to, he helped me get into college, and he was the one. Coach Corcoran, it's like Coach Moffit handed the baton off to Coach Corcoran, and he just took it to another level. Now I was 5 years into playing lacrosse, so maybe the time was right. 3 years in high school, I had to go to junior college for 2 years before going to Washington College, and so I was 5 years into playing lacrosse. Went down to Washington College, and they were asking me just the other day, how did you decide to go to Washington College? I said, when I sat in Coach Corcoran's office and just listened to him talk about his vision of, just playing at Washington College and what it would be like. And I would have signed up right then and there to play for him. This was like spring break. I was at my junior college, my sophomore year, and I went down, visited Delaware, visited Washington College, and I would have signed that with a couple of friends too. They ended up going to Syracuse. We visited Maryland too. I wasn't looking at Maryland. I just went along for the ride. They ended up going to Syracuse, me, Washington College. But as you mentioned, a lot of coaches, I don't know if it's just, luck. I'm sure a lot of it was his influence. There's no question a lot of it was his influence. Mm-hmm. But to have all of us, Coach Nostrand, Kevin Giblin, Steve Bevel, I mean, just, great coaches. But he was just the type of guy that you would run to a wall for. He would do, he would do anything for you. So loyal. We worked hard, and he was a disciplined coach, very similar to my high school coach. No doubt about it. Obviously very knowledgeable. He was a great player in his own right, and his dad was a legend coach, Joe Corcoran, up where I grew up. That's kind of how I ended up there, ended up going down there when he became the head coach, is because his dad had coached in the league that I played. And so he knew me. And of course my high school coach too knew Coach Corcoran. So there was that Hobart tie, but I can't say enough great things and what Coach Corcoran has meant to me personally, and the impact and how my life has turned out. Again, one of those, I look back and go, man, I went to Washington College and look at how my life's turned out. I wouldn't want to go back and roll the dice on, picking another way. I'm very happy the way things turned out. Hopefully we got another 30, 40 years of happiness, but I owe a lot to Coach Corcoran.
So I think about a lot of the times when I'm on the field coaching, how I might sound like or incorporate the lessons I've learned from previous coaches, especially my dad. Just a lot of the things he's told me growing up infiltrates my coaching style a little bit. And I a lot of the times I hear my dad and from some of my previous coaches when I coach players now, and I'm wondering maybe how coaches in your life, maybe Coach Corcoran, has impacted your own coaching style, and maybe some of the things that you do as a coach that reflects their coaching styles.
Oh, there's no question. All those, I will say this, and from going back to Coach Moffit and the work ethic and the discipline and the fundamentals. That's my script. That's who I am as a coach. I'm a big believer in, working hard. Fitness is important. The fundamentals are important. You take an athlete and you get him in shape and make him fundamentally sound, develop his fundamentals, man, and then you let his athleticism take over. And that's a pretty good recipe for success. And that's I've got that right out of my high school coach's playbook. Now, Coach Corcoran I learned just things. He was just so much fun to play for. I mean, it's just hard to describe almost. Just his personality, how, having fun was a very, very, very important part of it. Now, I'm sure some of my players, when I first got out and started coaching, would argue that, like, Coach, you were, some of the stories that they tell me, we talk about, I'm like, well, we're still having fun, but certainly as I've gotten older, I've realized, the value of, making sure, even if you're mad at them, you're coming out the other end, into practice, we move on, you know what I mean? Forgetting about it and not letting it linger. I will say, as a young coach, I probably did let, a bad practice linger, a bad game linger longer than it probably should have, but again, those are things you learn as you go along. So from Coach Corcoran, I learned, certainly having fun. Coach Urick took that even to the next level. Coach Urick, just coaching with him for 8 years, and his style, which was different from my high school coaches and Coach Corcoran's. And so that was, want to talk about lessons that I learned. And of course, a lot of one-liners. Coach Urick is the king of the one-liners. He's so funny. And so believe you me, you were just saying how you hear yourself, your dad and yourself talking. I'm rattling off Coach Urick's one-liners left and right, trying to get a laugh out of the guys like he used to get, from his players that he coached. So
Coach Urick at Georgetown was another huge influence, mentor for you in coaching for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. No, I mean, and I have him to thank. Again, another one of those, Coach Urick, I was coaching at St. Albans for 3 years, my third year. He became the head coach at Georgetown that first year, essentially my third year at St. Albans. And St. Albans and Georgetown are very close to each other. In fact, we used to practice right across the street from Georgetown. We had to take a bus to practice, and we would literally practice right across the street from Georgetown. So he used to and play games there too. So he used to come over, watch us play. And he didn't know a lot of people that first year. And so he'd come to my games, and we knew each other. Of course, I was actually, supposed to go to Hobart out of high school. I had committed to play football and lacrosse at Hobart, but unfortunately I didn't do well in school. And so that's why I had to go to a junior college. So Coach Urick and I knew each other for sure. But it was at the end of his first year, they had enough money in the budget, I guess, at that time where he could hire a full-time assistant coach. His first year, he had 2 part-time assistant coaches, one who ended up becoming a really good friend of mine, Will Schmidt. But so at the end of that first year, he asked me if I would be, if I'd be interested in being his assistant coach. You want to talk about, Coach Urick, I get to coach with Coach Urick,
right, at
a place like Georgetown. That was, I couldn't believe it, so that was fun. That began, a lifelong relationship. His family, they have three kids, Holly, Scott, and Mindy. We're almost close to them. I call myself family. I'm like a member of the Urick family. That's how close we are. And Mrs. Yu, going those apple pie, go over their house, and she used to make just the best apple pies. And so, yeah, the Urick family, again, the Uricks, the Corcorans, the Moffits, those three have really meant an awful lot. And the reason why I'm sitting here talking to you today, no doubt. Well, my mother's at the top of the food chain. I don't want to go without saying her. She is the real reason, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then the coaches come in 7, 8, 9. But between the 4 of them, they're the reason why I'm here today talking to you.
For sure. And I do want to talk about, as a head coach, right, at Dartmouth, at Stony Brook, at St. John's, at the Naval Academy, you've had all these experiences as a coach, whether it was an assistant position, but from there on as a head coach. What is it that you look for in a player that you're recruiting, and how do you identify certain characteristics of players that you feel like they would fit well into your program? And those are very different schools that you've had experiences at, right? Dartmouth and St. John's and Stony Brook, and then the Naval Academy, which I definitely want to talk about the Naval Academy. But is there certain qualities and aspects of a player that you feel are super important, maybe outside of just raw skill set, right? Because that's obvious. Every coach is looking for raw skill set, but what are those intangibles that you look for as a recruiter or coach?
Yeah, and that's, the one thing about, as we know, recruiting, it's certainly not an exact science, but I love, I love multi-sport athletes, that's one of the things that, that's not to say that, someone who just played lacrosse, I wouldn't recruit just as hard, but yeah, in general, yeah, I think, because the situations that I've been in, and again, I look at myself as part of an example too, and what my coach was able to do to me. But some of it was the circumstances of these programs and having to build programs and not being from the position of we're selecting our recruits. We're on the other end. We're just trying to get some good athletes. That we can develop. And there's plenty of them out there. That's for sure. Now the game has grown where it's becoming harder and harder. They're doing a lot more at a younger age, and the stick skills, the skill development that's have become, just watching the games these days and some of the things the kids are doing on the field, how they sling that ball around is pretty impressive. But multi-sport athletes, there's the evaluation, the live evaluation, trying to pick up as much as you can just in terms of the competitiveness of a person, how he competes. And I think, again, that's another one of those that, we're all kind of looking for, and, what separates what I'm looking at versus the other guy. I don't know. And again, it's never, we're never, perfect. You take chances on guys that you hope they're going to develop, and a lot of them do, some of them don't, but it's more of the mindset though, and that's the one thing, whether I can try to see how he competes during the game, talking to the coach, getting to know people, that knows him, what makes him tick. That's one of my big, it's one of my big questions. Like, what makes you tick? I want to know what makes that, what gets you fired up, what gets you motivated, what, kind of give me, so that at the end of the day, I'm trying to find out what makes a person tick. And, if it has the right ingredients, if you will, again, competitiveness and, whether it's, again, multi-sport, as you mentioned, we're going to look at the athlete. Is he fast, big, strong, all those measurables. And so it's a combination when you really get down to it. Obviously getting to know the kid too is a big part of it, but some kids are quiet, you don't know, you don't really get to know them until you get to know them. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's time invested. You don't get to know them within 5-10 minutes or even a couple of phone conversations. So,
and even when they come to your campus and sit down with you, they're 15, 16 years old. I remember when I was 15 years old in my garage, like calling Petramala. I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I'm calling Petro. Like, you don't really know what to say. And my dad actually gave me some good advice that helped me with those calls to college coaches. Is like, this is what they do for a living, is they talk to college and high school kids. Like, it's, just try to feel comfortable with it. But I know, talking to some of the Gilman guys and some of the other players that I help with recruiting stuff, it's like, it's nerve-wracking. It's hard to talk to college coaches for the first time, for sure.
There's no doubt it could be intimidating, especially as you mentioned, coach like, Dave Petramala, can you imagine that? That's all. You're getting a call from, Dave Petramala, that's got to be really exciting as a 15, 16-year-old, kid. But yeah, your dad's right. It's, and I'm consulting some kids too, some high school kids, who are going through the recruiting process. And I'm talking to them about, hey, and they're sophomores now. I'm like, you're going to be talking to these college coaches, just giving them tips, being able to ask, feel comfortable to ask them questions, because they want to be able to talk. They don't want to always, be asking the questions and then getting one word, responses, get kind of go back and forth, ask them questions, and so, but yeah, to your point, it's not easy though. And the worst part is when you got a bunch of schools interested in you, you got to whittle it down to 5 or so, 5, 6, 4, 3, whatever you do. And then you got to pick one, out of those 2, 3, 4. There's where it gets tough. And, the kids having to call the coach up and say, thanks, but no thanks, coach. I'm going to go to, school X or school Y. I know that's really tough for those high school kids, but,
let me ask you another question in terms of recruiting. So of all the schools that you coached at over your career, what was the hardest school to recruit at, and maybe what was the easiest school to recruit at? I don't know if that question gives a clear answer, but
Yeah,
they all seem like different schools to me.
They all had their challenges, significant challenges for whatever the reason. You take a school like the Dartmouth, obviously Ivy League. The success of the program was very limited when I took over. So trying to sell, that we're trying to turn it around, that's challenging. The Ivy League, getting into the school, that especially Dartmouth, they're on the upper tier of the Ivy League in terms of admissions process. But then the flip side of that, though, is it is the Ivy League, and I've seen, I witnessed kids turn down, scholarships to other schools to come to Dartmouth, and so, it has its challenges, but at the, on the flip side, like, hey, kids, I used to say this, and when I coached there, and I've been saying it ever since I left, the word Ivy is a very powerful word, it's like, that's a very powerful word. And then I moved on to St. John's, and that had its challenges. It was a new program, building a new program. It was it's in an urban environment versus for all intents and purposes, Hanover was the opposite,
Right,
rural.
Right.
So that there's those challenges, but but it had big time basketball, at the time, Big East basketball was, that helped lacrosse. There's no doubt about it, and it appealed to a different kid. It was a big commuter school. So it was more, even though we did and actually were able to recruit, nationally or at least regionally, we were going to get a lot of our kids right there from Long Island, which is not a bad place to get a lot of your players, by the way,
Right.
And you go to Stony Brook, and that, that had its challenges too, with, Stony Brook and, being, state school. And
you got a decent wave of Canadians at Stony Brook, though. How'd you get that? How'd you get the Canadians down to Stony Brook? How'd you?
You want to know what? Jake? And people have asked me this over the years, particularly when I was at Stony Brook, and we were having some pretty good years. Jordan McBride, who's one of the, the top scorers I've ever coached, easily. He would score 5 goals and have the ball on his stick for about 4 seconds. He can get it in on his stick, quicker than anybody. And he could catch Canadians, they could catch anything. He was more of an off ball guy versus a, carrier. But to the point of the conversation, going back to what we talked about, what I see and what what I'm looking for, he was at the 205 camp. I don't know if you remember that back in the day.
I was there.
Yeah, you've had, you're old enough to certainly be. You probably went to the 205 camp, right?
I did. Yeah, I was at 205.
You went to, yeah, of course. He was there, and so this is when I was at St. John's, my last year at St. John's. I started recruiting. I saw him. He was a little heavier, slow, but I just noticed his hands were just unbelievable. He could score. I mean, and he was at this camp, and nobody recruited. I was the only one who recruited him. So when I left St. John's to go to Stony Brook, and of course he's Canadian, he grew up in British Columbia. From St. John's to Stony Brook didn't matter to him. He just wanted to come to the United States and play lacrosse. So I said, Jordan, I'm leaving St. John's to go to Stony Brook. We'd be interested. He goes, yeah. Absolutely. I was the only one that was recruiting him. And so when people ask me, and I'm like, fellas, he was right there. He was right there at the 205 camp for all you other guys to see. And I was the only one who saw him. Now, what that led to, though, was he said, Coach, one day when I was recruiting him, he said, Coach, this is one of my friends of mine, Kevin Crowley. He's very interested in coming to the United States and play too. You check this video out. And tell me what you think. It was him playing. It was kind of like in a pickup, kind of looked like a pickup game in the background. It was just in a crappy field, I remember. And this tall, lanky guy just running up and down the field. And I'm going, oh, yeah, he can come our way. So that's what really got it going. And then Robbie Campbell, he played on the under-19 team that Kevin played on as well. No, did Kevin play on it? I don't think Kevin played on it. But I ended up recruiting Robbie Campbell off the under 19 team. And then I just, again, that kind of led to
the
all
pipeline.
these other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Canadian pipeline. That's awesome.
The Canadian, yeah. And at that time, Denver had Canadians, a decent amount of Jamie Monroe at the time was the coach. Mm-hmm. He's the one who really started. Now, we could talk about the Canadians. I know I'm getting off topic here. We can talk about the Canadian influence on our sport for a long, for a long time. I call it the Canadian invasion because that really has impacted our sport over the last 20 years.
For sure.
Now, even going way back, you had the Gates, you had you had great players that would come down and play, but not like it ended up being, you know what I mean? There was one point where the floodgates opened up. Everyone had to get a Canadian player, you just had to get a Canadian player, to validate your team. It felt like, but there was a reason why. They were pretty good players.
Yeah. And it's so true that you can see how much they've influenced the sport now with all the picking and rolling going on and the inside work. And yep.
Yes. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
I'll never forget our first game, Jordan. We played Virginia. Jordan and Kevin, they just tore up Virginia in the two-man game. I can't remember the stats, but one of them had like 5 goals and 2 assists, and the other one had like 4 goals and 3 assists. I mean, they just picked Virginia apart. They had no answer. They had Now, I will give Virginia the credit. The next year, they figured it out. Obviously we know they have the tremendous athletes, but no, yeah, we gave Virginia fits for 4 years. I mean, we played them great. Could never beat them. We lost to them 3 times by a goal, 1 in overtime. Could never get over the hump. On them. But we played some great games. But yeah, it was as I call it, again, the Canadian invasion back in the the 2000s. It really started to
for sure
see it come, see the impact that they were having nationally on our sport.
So Coach, I do want to ask you about some of the leaders and players that you've coached over your career, and maybe if you could think of maybe we'll get to the Naval Academy first, because I'm curious about, as a coach at Navy, how you could lead leaders. Like, all the players on your team are really born leaders. They have a calling to go to a service academy. And as I've told you before, my sister went to West Point, so I've kind of been familiar with the type of person that goes to one of these schools. Is they are very driven. Like, they have all of these intangible qualities that we're talking about already. Maybe what did you learn at Navy about how to inspire or motivate someone who's already pretty inspired and motivated? I just feel like that's such a hard skill set to acquire and develop.
Yeah, well, the thing you got to keep in mind is they have all those attributes, but it still needs to be fostered and developed, and there's where I think coaches and the people that they whether it's their teachers, professors, or their company officers, or whoever the rank and file, showing them the way. Now in my case, it was the lacrosse coach, which, as we know, sports is very important in general, but certainly at the military, at the service academies, that's it's moral, mental, and physical. The physical part of it is a very important piece, and certainly the competition. When you're playing Division I sports, just takes it to another level. So at the end of the day, they need to be developed too. I mean, it's there, definitely is there, but it does, and some of them, it's like anything else, developing as an athlete physically, some of them have to work a little harder. Some of them are natural, some of them are just easy, they're just easy leaders. But I'll be honest with you, Jake. I did, when it came to lacrosse, and I used to say this to, again, just in general, the people when they would ask you about the Naval Academy and how it is coaching these young men. I used to say, and I do swear by this: if you took them out of the locker room and put them in if you put them in Maryland's locker room or North Carolina, you wouldn't really know the difference between. As I say this jokingly, they can be knuckleheads just like any other 18, 19, 20, they could be kids, but certainly at the, so and there are some of them, that are just they're really into the military piece, but a lot of them, they're into it, but again, you don't know it. They're still kids that want to have fun. Right.
Right.
And they make mistakes. Unfortunately, they get held accountable. And a number of them have paid the price, for some mistakes that they've made that, any other place, any other where, you probably get slap on the wrist and,
right.
Don't do it again. These kids are getting kicked out of school, and so there's a lot more, on the line when it comes to behavior. But so, as a coach, you obviously yield a lot of influence, certainly, the head coach. So that piece allowed me, to just do my thing, be a coach, and I was giving them, a little bit of extra, if you want to call it, because again, we're playing a sport and they're there, the Naval Academy is called the Leadership Laboratory, that's another name for it, so they're getting all of that, teaching and mentoring. We're just doing it from the lacrosse end or the athletic end. We're just doing it our way. But it still is pretty darn effective. And a lot of the pieces are in line with, at least for me,
right.
With the military, I was in line with them. So that made it a little easier for me.
Right. I was going to ask you a bit about building culture in a program. And it seems like at a place like Navy, that culture's already in place because it's part of the school, right? Is that all of those pillars of what makes success and a winning culture is already almost ingrained in the school, right? That's why they go there in the first place, is to develop leadership. And
no question. Now, the one thing I found, you do have to be a little careful, because sometimes they look at the athletic part as kind of a break in their day. You know what I mean? They look at it, they want it to be, and there's where, making it, we're going to be challenged. We're going to work hard, but we got to make sure these guys are enjoying it too, because these 2 hours of the day may be their most enjoyable of the day, so you had to at least keep that in mind. Now, it wasn't going to be every day we're out there, having just a jolly old time, but you can have a good time. You can work hard, and not be growling at them all the time. But, so that part you had to, that was something for me, and for everyone, most of the coaches at the Naval Academy did not go to the Naval Academy. So we were all learning, then I think the AD wanted, for some reason, he thought that was a benefit, and so there was a learning curve is where I'm getting
Gotcha.
to.
Okay.
Those first couple of years trying to figure that part out. But at the end of the day, it's like, just go coach, just go be the coach that you've always been. And everything else will, kind of follow suit.
What made it difficult to recruit, or what made it easy to recruit at a place like the Naval Academy? I'm just thinking about, like you're talking about the selling points at, St. John's. We have basketball here, and Dartmouth, it's an Ivy League school. At Navy, it's like, it's pretty much free. It's like you go to school, you're not paying tuition, right? It's a beautiful campus. Everything's, you commit to the military, right? And you're committing to a life of service, and it's not the same at all as a regular college experience. So I'm sure that there are pros and cons there in recruiting, but what was your experience recruiting at a place like Navy?
Yeah, it's hard to describe, I guess, because it wasn't on one hand, you'd be shocked with the interest of kids. It's like, wow, it's not like we're begging kids to come. The interest is super high. Now, whether that interest is from the parents, 'cause a lot of times that the parents, hey, let's because they had military or something, they believe in it, and a lot of times you do get the kids will follow suit, or the grandkids that follow suit, but a lot of times the kids want to go do something else. And as you pointed out, a couple of things you pointed out that certainly, for a 16, 15, 17-year-old, the idea of the commitment, the 4 years of college, if you will, and then the 5 years, a minimum of 5 years that you have of service, and usually that's beyond 5 years. I would say the percentage of 5 years and right on to 5 years and get out. Inevitably, it's another year gets tacked on for whatever the reason. But then there's on the front end, and a lot of cases, not all cases, where you just have to go to prep school, and that's a challenge too, because a year, you say it's only a year to a 15-year-old. Again, that's another year, so that's 10. Doing the math, that's 10 years. A year of prep school, 4 years of college, and 5 years minimum of service. So that's not an easy sell. You mentioned it. I used to say, hey, not only do you get to come for free, we pay you. The government, they get paid. Right. And so you try to, but you do sell the big picture. It's not a 4-year commitment. You're making a lifetime commitment, and yes, you are. You're serving your country. There's a lot, to be said for that. And we all know that it takes a special person, especially to go to the military, to West Point or the Naval Academy or even Air Force. There's something that's special in that young man, that he's committed to, again, not only putting his life on the line to protect their country, but again, a minimum of the education, the combined, again, 10 years minimum. That's not, for a 16, I keep going back to a 15, 16, 17-year-old, that's a lot for him to digest.
For sure. I mean, I was talking about how hard it was for me to, pick up the phone and call a coach, but these people are committing to almost like a lifetime in the military at 15 years old. It's very difficult. And it baffles me how my sister made that decision at, 15, 16 years old, when I would have never really thought that she might do that. But it's amazing what these young men and women do.
And they come, the one thing I found is you would get kids who knew it right away. You would get some that didn't know it, and it would hit them later on. It would hit them like, they get in high school and they're like, I want to serve, I want to go, and some of them, it's a family thing. Some of them, it's no one in their family, has been in the middle. You really do get unique stories. And I've had some kids who, went through it and was tough, hung in there, and then they graduate and they're not happy through it. They're grinding their way through it, and then they graduate and it's the best thing that ever happened,
Right.
So it that was, my 8+ years there was, it was special. There's no doubt about it. Just the people that you're around, the environment that you're in. I used to shake my head the first year a lot, but even in my 8th year, I would sit there at times and be like, I don't know how these guys do it. I don't know how there's not enough time in the day for these guys to do what they're being asked to do. And I actually went to a couple, because they have coaches go to class days every October, month of whatever. And so I'd go, and sit in on some of the classes that they're taking. And I would just sit there and be like, you have got to be kidding me. There's no way. I don't know. So I was, even though I was a coach, and I think a lot of the coaches would say this, you're in a lot of ways, you're in awe of them, for what they're doing and what they're going through. And especially, it's one thing, even as just to be a regular student, but then to be an athlete and the commitment that takes, and a lot of these athletes are very, very successful athletes.
Right.
It's not like just, it's a participation sport and you're just playing, these people take, it's serious stuff, and they're very good at it. It's high end. And they're able to do that all the while.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question for you is who, and this might be somewhat of a tough question because I know you've been surrounded by leaders and people of high caliber for a long time, but of the people that you've encountered recently as a coach, or, maybe some of your players, some of the other coaches you've been around, who has a certain work ethic or leadership style that really sticks out to you as excellent? Like you've never seen anything like this person's work ethic or their leadership, like something that really inspired you in a person.
Well, Pat, this young man at the Naval Academy, Pat Keena, played at Landon. I did not recruit him. He was a freshman. Was he he might have been at the prep school my first year. And so I think he graduated in 2016, and it was right, my first couple of years, it's no big secret. I mean, it was first couple of years was a big transition for the team, for me. We struggled on the field mightily. And so it was going to take a special person, a special leader. And he was the one. I don't want to, because party wants to choose my words carefully, because I don't want to disrespect anyone else, because there were some other great leaders, and it took more than Pat Keena, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Jules Godino was the co-captain with him, but I think Pat was the one. I found out stories, and this was at a time where our program, Jake, we were getting better. We were getting better, we were bringing in some pretty good recruiting classes, and we were starting to see it, in practice on the field. But, you still got to get over that hump, and there's where Pat Keena came along. I'll never forget this. And Coach Wellner and I, my assistant, who's now out at Notre Dame, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, we still talk about, Pat Keena from time to time. The first meeting, his beginning of senior year, they had been gone all summer. So we're going to meet with the captains. It was like in August sometime. And we had a list of things. Again, we were right at that point where we were getting better. We were, now it's going to come down to the, really detailed and that culture, the team, and all that now took on another meaning. And so we had our list of things that, we were going to ask the captains to, kind of lead the way on. And we walk into this meeting, and they're like, coaches, we got a list of things that we want to talk to you guys about. And if there was 10 of them, 8 of them were the exact same things that we wanted to talk to them about. You know what I mean? It was like Coach Well and I looked at each other like, oh my God, we were like, wow, this is great, and what made it even better is they followed through. Now I heard stories after the fact about how, he was running the team and how the team respected him. He was one of these captains where, and this is one of the things too, they teach, one of the things you learn at the Naval Academy is the difference between leadership and likership, and, likership. Yeah. He's a fun, great guy. You know what I mean? We all like him because he's cool. And, and inevitably that guy becomes kind of the leader because people think he's popular and he's a good guy. Maybe he's not making, the best decisions off the field, but he's just a good guy,
Right.
that versus the guy who, he wants to, nobody wants to be talked bad about. So I won't say he doesn't, mind, he doesn't want some love, but it's not about that for him. It's respect, you know what I mean? And so he wasn't afraid to hold his teammates accountable. He wasn't afraid to discipline the team for mistakes that, were being made where they shouldn't have been made, maybe out on a Saturday night, or, they're not going out on Friday nights. Maybe seniors do, juniors get to go out for a little bit. But so he was doing, as we all know, keeping a locker room clean. It's a little thing, but it does say something about the team. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm sure everyone has their locker room issues. And for the first couple of years, I had locker room issues. You know what I mean? The equipment managers moaning and groaning about this, that, and the other thing. When Pat Keena was in charge, we had no locker room issues. You know what I mean? Things like that he just took care of. And so I have a tremendous lot of respect. There's another young man, Steve Waldeck, who I coached at Stony Brook. He's very similar too. He was one of those guys that the work ethic guys look up to, and that was important for me. As we were turning the corner on that program, I wanted those new guys, those young guys, to come in and look up and see the seniors doing things the right way, see the upperclassmen doing the right way.
That's huge. Yeah. That really, go ahead.
I was going to say, Pat made sure that the upper class were doing things the right way, for the present, but also for the future.
Yeah, that really changes the culture of the program, because the younger guys come in and now they want to be like him, right? And then
100%.
It works on its own from that point forward. So that's huge for a coach, huge for a program.
No question,
Absolutely.
He was impressive. Yeah. And again, it's one thing when you're seeing it, but then later on you hear stories, people, the guys are telling you, yeah, coach, you just, that next year they're flooding me with stories about Pat Keena, and I was like, oh my God, really? He did that. He goes, yeah. One day he made us, we were screwing around. We got in trouble. Saturday, he took us out on the field. He ran us. We couldn't go out. And I was like, really?
He's an extra coach.
He stands out. He really does stand out. And again, it came at a time for me and where the program was, where, man, we needed that type of person to be a leader, of the program as we were trying to get over that hump.
So, Coach, any chance you remember to bring a book recommendation? Do you have a book recommendation in mind?
I do, and it's funny because we're talking about the Naval Academy, and one of the things that I learned, and I don't know how it was when you were up at Harvard, like when you went out when you were with your team out at a away game, overnight game, or team meal. You're at a team meal, even at home. You guys probably had team meals. What was the rank and file of the upper class, or the team? Did the seniors eat first, and then all the way to the freshmen, because they're freshmen, they eat last. Typically that's how it was, at places that I coached. Like the seniors, you earned the right to eat first, and then the freshmen, you're freshmen. At the Naval Academy, I felt like early on, that's not how it works. It's the other way. They want the freshmen eat first, the seniors eat last. Right. And I thought that was so awesome. That to me, I was like, oh my God, that is great. That's how it should be. You're right. You want to welcome these freshmen, especially at a place like the service academies where, as we all know, these freshmen aren't going through your typical freshmen. Yeah. They're not hanging out on a Monday night, with the boys, at a frat house watching, the Cowboys lose to the Redskins.
Right.
So that's even more of a reason why you want to try to make things as easy on them as you can, because they're dealing with so much other stuff.
Yep.
But the book, and I've read a lot of it. It's called Leaders Eat Last. Why some sports teams have success and others don't.
Oh, wow.
And it's written by Simon Sinek, Sinek. And really, he just talks about leadership, the culture, developing culture of a selfless culture, the leaders being selfless and creating, the culture of cooperation, trust, where and he dives deep into early on. He goes way back to the primitive days where we were built to work together. He kind of starts way back then, and he brings it forward, and he talks about some certain companies and how their success. Military, brings up the military. So when I saw it, I was like, oh man, and I'd heard about it. So I knew I had to read it because, again, at the Naval Academy, it's about leaders eating last, and so it's a great book. And, it's I guess for anyone, but certainly being a coach, it definitely gives you some good insight on some, just on how to, being a leader and his philosophy on it.
That fits in perfectly with our conversation about Patrick Keena and the leaders
really
that you've coached. So Leaders Eat Last. I'm gonna check it out.
Leaders Eat Last. Simon Sinek, Sinek. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Sinek or Sinek, but it's a good book. Awesome. It's a good book.
Coach, thanks so much for hopping on the Zoom today and coming on the podcast. It was great catching up with you and talking to you. I learned a lot from hearing you talk about your experiences. Should definitely do this again. We miss you at Gilman for sure. The guys miss you out on the field, so I hope to see you. Hope to see you out there soon.
You're killing me, Jake, man. It was great. This was a lot of fun. It's great to see you. And I'm going to try to get up. I'm going to promise you I'm going to get up to a game. I'm throwing out these promises. And I won't be able to see you guys play. I won't be able to see. Now, at practice maybe a practice. I don't know if you're allowed to. Maybe coach, if I get tested, I can sneak in. And because I'd love to see the guys, Kyle and all those guys, Craig and Remy and right. Charlie Pope and who else am I missing? There's the middies there, some middies, the younger middy. I guess one's a senior. Who's the guy I'm thinking of? Was a middy, kind of raw. we were just getting him into some action last year.
Jake Tompkins.
Jake from State Farm. Yes, Jake. Yes, my man, Jake.
Yes. Yep.
How's he doing, by the way? I know we're talking online. Is he doing all right?
He's doing well. Yeah, all these guys are they're doing well. We definitely have some talent to work with and some guys. It's not the same, obviously, as last year. Those guys were high caliber, but we can do some work here with these.
Well, I have no doubt you and Coach Nostrand and the coaches will work your magic, and the boys will be competitive. But Jake, this was awesome, man. I really appreciate. It was an honor, to be honest with you. It was just great to be able to talk and share some stories, and you kind of brought me back to some of my old days that I could, share with you and how I got to where I am today. And so it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Coach Sowell, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right, Jake.
I'll talk to you soon.